The Lakeport Plantation home, located in Lake Village, Arkansas, was built in 1859 for Lydia and Lycurgus Johnson. When their house was built, they used enslaved labor to grow and harvest cotton and other crops. By 1860, there were 155 enslaved laborers working from sunup to sundown, farming, tending to livestock, and clearing trees to turn into more farmland. There were 6 to 8 enslaved laborers that worked inside the house cooking, cleaning, and tending to the family. They primarily worked at the back of the house. How people cooked and stored food in the 1800s was much different than today. Lakeport was built before there was electricity, and there was no running water through the house. This round structure is called a cistern. This cistern would have been used to collect and store water for cooking, cleaning, and drinking. Around the house, there are gutters that would collect rainwater. These gutters were connected to an underground system that led the water to this cistern and a second cistern located at the back of the house. On the back porch, the enslaved laborers would have been able to go in and out of the house as needed to work. The furthest door on the porch leads into the kitchen. At least one enslaved laborer would have worked in the kitchen as the cook, but there may have been 1 or 2 assistants to the cook. Without electricity, the enslaved laborers wouldn't be able to simply turn on the stove to start cooking breakfast in the morning. Instead, they would have to get a fire started in the center of the oven to heat the stove to use for cooking. This can sometimes take over an hour to get the oven hot enough to use. This stove would be used to cook meals for the Johnsons. The enslaved laborers working the fields were commonly expected to cook their own breakfast, lunch, and dinner from their weekly rations. However, during busy harvest times, the enslaved laborers would come to the back kitchen door to get their lunch. From the back kitchen door, the dairy, second cistern, and smokehouse can be seen. The smaller of the 2 brick buildings is a dairy. Today, when we want to keep our food cold, we use the refrigerator. In the 1800s, before electricity, a building called a dairy could be used. These small brick buildings would contain milk, butter, and cheese to be kept cold. In the winter, this building would stay cool due to the colder weather outside. In the summers, ice would be used to keep the food chilled. This cement structure is the second cistern. This cistern held additional water collected from the gutters when it rained to be used for cooking, cleaning, and drinking. This large brick structure is a reconstruction or remake of the original smokehouse. The original smokehouse collapsed in the 1980s. This brick building was made to look like the original to show how the smokehouse would have looked when it was first built in the 1800s. A smokehouse was used to smoke meat, mainly pork, to make it last longer because the dairy would not be cold enough to keep the meat from going bad. This smokehouse is rather large because it would need to store enough smoked pork to feed the 155 enslaved laborers on the plantation and the Johnson family. Cooking and storing food in the 1800s was much different than it is today.